Hello, everyone.
Morning, everyone.
Morning,
Or
everyone.
good
Good
evening,
morning.
case may be.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hello, Tadao.
Hello.
Hi.
Morning.
Morning, Jeff.
Out in the woods with the deer.
Yeah, that's my backyard.
Oh,
That's a picture from a few months ago.
oh, nice.
Hello, everyone.
Morning, everyone.
Morning,
Or
everyone.
good
Good
evening,
morning.
case may be.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hello, Tadao.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Morning.
Hello.
Out in the woods with the deer.
Yeah, that's my backyard.
Oh,
That's a picture from a few months ago.
oh, nice.
Hello, everyone. Beautiful.
Morning, everyone.
Morning,
Or
everyone.
good
Good
evening,
morning.
case may be.
Hello, hello, hello.
Getting an echo.
Hello, Tadao. Hi.
Morning.
Hello.
Out in the woods with the deer.
Yeah, that's my backyard.
Oh,
That's a
it's
picture
about
from
the
a few
third
months
time
ago.
around for this bit of conversation. I wonder what's happening. It's on a loop.
Getting an echo.
Hello, Tadao. Hi.
Yes, it's on the loop.
Out in the woods.
Yeah, it's very strange.
Oh, there's Sal. Good morning.
Morning.
Thank you for the thank you for the transcript, Sal. It was
สวัสดี
great.
ครับอาจารย์ครับ
สวัสดีครับ
You're welcome.
Hi, Pina.
Anne, how are you?
Well, thanks.
Hi, Pina.
Hi, John. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Pina.
Yeah.
Good morning, Ajahn.
สวัสดีค่ะ
What do you got?
สวัสดีครับ
สวัสดีค่ะ อาจารย์ Does anyone have something to start with? Tadao, do you have anything today?
Yes, I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
It is said that Chakra Vijnana, no. Chakra Pasada Rupa is very tiny. And also Chakra Aramana is also very tiny. And so suppose that there is a contact of Chakpasada Rupa and Chakaramana, and also Chakra Vijnana. Everything is very tiny. But what we see is not tiny at all. So I'm wondering how there is an expansion of what we see as the process of Jaku, as the process of Jaku Vijnana, and also Bhavanga, and then Mano Vijnana process. And I'm wondering at what process or at which process something and the tiny sort of tiny events become so large or expand so largely, and so that we actually see is not tiny at all. What we see is a sort of big vision of visual object. So it's almost like there is a steady expansion of visual object and actual process of seeing. And we maybe explained it in terms of occurring of concepts. But what I'd like to know is the expansion, actual expansion of what we see. This is my question. I'm not sure whether my question is clear or not, but it's what I'd like to know.
The world of so many things around
Oh,
is not the world that Buddha has enlightened. Because you see that how tiny only a kalapa is. And one kalapa, and then the Chakupasatha, one Chakupasatha, can it condition seeing?
yeah, I think
It's
so.
right there. The kalapa is so very little, only one kalapa of the object, and the kalapa of Chakupasatha can only one be conditioned for seeing when they are there as ayatana.
Yeah, I think it's possible.
So this is the world of panya, which is quite different from the world of ignorance. The world of ignorance does not understand anything as it is. What about just one kalapa? And in that one kalapa, there is Chakupasada, see? And only that which is there can the object impinge on it. And it can condition a moment of seeing. No need to have several Chakupasada at all, just only one. Can that be conditioned for seeing to arise, like now? See, that's why the rapidity of the arising and falling away of Dhamma condition the idea from nimitta, because just one particular one cannot be object of understanding by the way of processes from this moment to other moment before there can be the moment of seeing, and then on and on and on. See, so that is the world of right understanding until it can be the world which can be enlightened, the truth as it is. Otherwise, how can that which has been accumulated for quite so long, years and years, the idea of something is there, or in life, each life, even this life, can be completely, absolutely eradicated if that does not appear as it is, as nothing, nothing at all. That which is there now has gone instantly all the time, And that is the word of wisdom or understanding. The truth from intellectual understanding to the development of panya, which directly begin to understand the characteristic of that which now appear as no thing, just one visible object, and hardness are different. So how can that be together as something when there is right understanding of each? That's why we learn to understand each reality as not self. From the very beginning, anatta, and then beginning to understand that which is seen, and if it still appear as something, can that be the elimination or the eradication of the idea of something there? It is completely that it has been accumulated so long to be no more at all, absolutely, by different levels of panya, which understand it, and the understanding letting go the idea of self, little by little, little by little. That's why it takes time to eradicate the akusa, the anusya, because it has been accumulated so long time ago. So this is the difference between the Prativeda, when the reality appears as it is, they bring about the idea of no one at all. That cannot be taken for anything, because it's only that which appears, not like things around, and the reality which does not have any shape or form at all is there. Just experience different from that which is experienced. See, Panya has to develop on and on and on with letting go the idea of self, because the point is that to enlighten the truth that Buddha has enlightened, all his savakas have to enlighten the truth. Otherwise, anusya cannot be eradicated at all, as long as the world appears as just like now. So many things in it. But actually, what about just one moment of seeing? Because citta arises only one at a time. So how can the seeing see things, or it just see that which appears only to the seeing only? Arising and falling away, how can they be taken for thing or sound? No one from the very beginning of the first vipassana yana. Otherwise, it cannot be clear comprehension of that which appears. So this reality is just like this. Can it appear? Because it's true. And what can experience that? Ignorance cannot at all. Taking whatever is said now as something, and I who experience it. But what about the feeling, the sankhara khanda, the sanya khanda, and so on? See, all there, not the same at all. If that is not directly experienced, how can there be letting go the idea of self? See, it's not just the word of the Buddha just to listen and think about. It is to develop the understanding, to have more confidence of the truth, that what is the truth? Our reality is our reality, cannot be two at the same time at all. For example, there cannot be two chittas at the same time, because it's different moment of experiencing an object. That's why we begin to understand who's the Buddha, how about his great wisdom, and what is that which meant experiencing the truth, Ariya Satya, the arising and falling away of all conditioned realities. No doubt, in a day, in life, anytime. Otherwise, there is still the idea of self underlying everything, because of the accumulation so long and so great enough to cover us up the truth all the time. Otherwise, what is meant by enlightenment, just like now, impossible. So one begins to understand that without the parami, it's impossible to understand little by little. As parami, how can there be just great instant right understanding to experience the arising falling away of whatever is now appearing? Because they are together as something, but when they are not together, just one characteristic, that cannot be taken for anything or self. For example, sanya and vedana and the experiencing. Vedana khanda, sanya khanda, sankhara khanda, and vijnana khanda. If they are not directly experienced as different ones, how can there be the letting go the idea of self? And this moment is moment of parami, when there is understanding, little by little.
Ajahn, the point I'd like to sort of raise that Chak Vijnana, Chak Pasada Rupa is tiny, tiny. And also visual object is tiny, tiny. And coming together of these two hands, Chak Vijnana, what we perceive is not tiny, tiny, but what we perceive is large vision. I'm wondering that perception of that large vision comes from the mind or process, or even as the process of seeing. To me,
Yeah,
yes.
absolutely so.
Many moments of thinking and many mind door processes of thinking follow each, we are told, follow each moment of sense door experiencing. Just as the thinking is what gives us the idea of perceiving people and things, so it also gives the idea of perceiving a space and a wide range of vision. Obviously the visible object cannot change. I think you asked, is there any actual expansion of the visible object? Visible object is just visible object, cannot expand or contract. So it's just what it is. We think of it as tiny, it may be, but there's no need to conceptualize too much, because the task of the Buddha is to understand the correct nature of what is appearing at the present moment. And what is appearing at the present moment may be the experiencing a visible object, or it may be the thinking about the visible objects, many visible objects that have been experienced. And that's what's important to know, to understand.
So Jonathan, are you saying that so-called, so what I call expansion is conducted by the mind or process or processes?
What is the reality appearing at the present moment? Is it visible object, or is it thinking about what has been seen? The assistance of memory and other factors.
Yeah, it's a type of thinking.
Because without that thinking, there wouldn't be the idea of people and things, because visible object is just that which impinges on the eye base, the eye sense, as you've correctly explained. So anything apart from that has to be the product of thinking, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But when visible object is the object of awareness, it has a particular characteristic. That characteristic is not tiny or big. That characteristic is the object of eye consciousness, the only thing that can be experienced through that doorway. And it's the same for the other doorways. One could equally ask about sound, for example, because sound also must be tiny if we want to think of it in those terms. The audible object that is experienced by ear consciousness must also be tiny if we want to think of it in those terms. But when it's the object of awareness, there's no notion of big, small or big, but just that which is the object of the ear consciousness.
Yeah. I'd like to see these tiny, tiny realities.
Yeah, that's the problem. Because we hear that it's tiny, so then we want to see the tiny one. And it's not like that at all.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
And this is the conjuring trick of Chitta, that it seems that what is seen is this expansion you mentioned, or this big picture, but actually because of being countless Chittas arising with sanya, marking and remembering, countless visible objects seen, and countless moments of thinking through the mind door about what has been seen, there comes to be the idea that what is seen is this expanded vision or picture, or all the buildings outside, or the people around. But this is just the nature of the conjurer. The reality is that what's seen is just that which is seen, the visible object. And what is thought about are the ideas and the impressions about what is seen again and again.
Yeah, I totally agree with you.
Is it useful at this time to talk about nimitta? How the process by which the seeing of the visual object becomes concept. Because what we think we see, you know, as you say, the expansion, what we think we see is essentially concept.
All ideas depending on the
ideas, yes,
of all the different realities that have been experienced. Yes. If there were no nimitta, no signs left from the experience of the tiny visible objects, the tiny sounds and so on, there wouldn't be any thinking about expansion.
Mm-hmm.
It's true. And like we read in the sutta, what the world, the fantasy that Chitta can create is far more amazing and extraordinary than any picture painted by any artist. So Chitta can think and imagine anything, create any expansion or idea about what is seen. So as Ajahn said at the beginning, there's so many ideas and worlds of different things around, but it's not the world that the Buddha became enlightened to, that it is just a visible object. It is seen now nothing in it at all. And it's just seeing which sees no one who sees at all at this moment. So this is the fantasy world that we're used to living in day and night all the time when there's no understanding.
Just thinking about a very tiny ant, but still you know that it's an ant by nimitta, right? And even there are eye sense and ear and nose and the the tongue sense or the body sense. They are there. How little it is, but still it can condition moment of experiencing. See, think of just single moment, because you see that as that which seen as rupa has something as its characteristic, but that is different, like hardness and seeing and whisper object. So how much more about that which has no shape and form at all? The experiences can be object of understanding. To understand that the rupa, no matter how tiny it is a rupa. And the succession of the arising and falling away condition the idea of the different ones. So that is the way it is. What appears is that which is nimitta, because no one can experience a very only one moment of citta experiencing it all. So the object which is there as the object of one moment of citta does not appear as just one, because one citta cannot be the object of understanding. Only the mitta of citta, only the mitta of sanya, and so only the mitta of rupa. No matter how tiny it is, the ant, very, very tiny, but the nimitta is there to make known that it's an ant. So it's the citta which understand that as something, take it for something, and that something is nimitta. So what appears now, only nimittas of Dhamma and Rupa. And so we understand what is meant by the enlightenment, the truth, because what appears as nimitta, but still the panya of the great wisdom of the Buddha can understand everything as it is. Not only that, but all, whatever is real as Dhamma. Not just in this world, anywhere. The Nama, Dhamma must be Nama, the experiencing, and the Rupa, no matter how tiny it is, it's a Rupa. Otherwise, they cannot be letting go completely, permanently, absolutely, the idea of self, never to arise again, because no conditions, because of understand all of them as they are, as no one and nothing. And this is meant by the enlightenment. So how much ignorance can be known by panya? Otherwise, one might take or think that one knows a lot. But actually, only what level? Intellectual level, prayati or patipati or pativeda. But that can be experienced when there is enough condition. Panya develops on and on by Sankaradhamma, everything. No one there at all. So how can the one knows how much understanding is there enough for any level of understanding? Only what appears with the understanding can be known, that it's not like as usual as one hasn't known it before. For example, even right now, people who haven't listened to the Buddha's word yet cannot understand what is true. There is I see, I hear, I think all the time, from life to life. But from the words of the enlightened one who share the truth, people or anyone who heard it could begin to develop understanding, not by oneself, but the understanding develops little by little. In only one life, not enough, more and more and more in each life, that there can be the hearing of the teachings. So listen carefully, wisely to understand the truth. Usually there is not enough considering to the words that Buddha taught, because one has one's own accumulated idea of something all the time. That's why if one still think about that by one's accumulation, one cannot understand the teachings clearly because not enough thinking. For example, no one see why the taste is a taste. Can the taste be the taste of fish, of whatever apple or whatever is there? It's only the taste. Thinking just about that, the taste is only the moment when it is tasted by citta, which experience it, only that, different from moment of seeing. It means that there is no more taste at moment of seeing. It means that it's completely gone. What is not known is that forever, never to arise again. But there is the clinging to the mind, thinking about it, taking it for permanent one to think about. But actually, each moment which is not experienced now, gone completely, no matter what we are talking about. The hand, the foot, the world, people and things, not there anymore. When only a characteristic of a reality is experienced. Panya is not enough. That's why one clings to one's own accumulation of thinking in terms of nimitta and things. But when there's more understanding, there will be the beginning of thinking about that. No more. Only there at moment when it's experienced, little by little in daily life. And this is the study Dhamma, not the other way at all, because there is Dhamma all around, no studying, no understanding it yet. But from hearing and considering, it begins to understand what is meant. Study Dhamma, that which is now, to understand it as it is, little by little. Because pariyatti is not in the book, but it's now. When Buddha asked the people who went to see him about realities right then, to understand that all are there as Dhamma only. Begin to understand what is meant by Dhamma clearly and clearly.
Can we say that, Ajahn, that understanding the Dhammas that are appearing is the development of the understanding that will bring also understanding of no self eventually?
And when it's there, Panya has no doubt about what is meant by Satipatthana, because there must be Panya at that very moment of that which directly appears.
Hi, Ajahn. You often say that wise consideration is very important. Consider wisely what we've heard. But in my case, most of the time in my daily life, what I have is self-talk. And 99.9 is useless, sort of meaningless content. But I cannot stop my self-talk. How can we have more useful consideration in my daily life?
There is no understanding of the Dhamma yet. Even just one word, not enough, as long as there is the idea of how. See? Why how? Now reality appears. Why how? See, it's there to be object of understanding. The characteristic as it has conditioned to arise. But that is thinking from hearing. But there must be the understanding of whatever arises, whatever is there has a reason. Why not think about that instead of trying to how I can make it different, to have more understanding of it? But even the word, no one, because what is that? That which is seen only. Can that be anything? And what is seen cannot be shape and form, paper and things, but only that which is the object of seeing only. No idea, no nimitta yet. But at that moment, when there's more understanding, the only moment of seeing and the only object of that seeing cannot be directly experienced because it's gone all the time unknowingly. That's why when there is the understanding more to see that it can be directly experienced, but not with the idea of self or how can I see. This is where to understand that they are not under anyone's control at all. They are there already, but the idea how can I arises and it's gone. And then another idea is there again, unknowingly taking everything for I, but when there is the understanding, even that idea is conditioned to arise. So it's much more to learn about no one and no thing, but the understanding of that which appears can bring about the wise considering, little by little, that it's there. Know how I can make it arise. Know how I can change it. See, because it's there and it's gone. To understand that it's not permanent. It's the moment of beginning to understand the truth of it. That it's only that which is seen, gone. And that which is heard, gone. And the thinking, gone. Everything just in a split second. How can there be the I and how? If anyone try to help the other to make it or to do it right or wrong, this is wise considering.
Yeah, I know that having an idea of how can I is totally wrong. But also I'm a bit discouraged because what I think all the time is useless. It's not important.
Because not understanding Dhamma as a self. So I'm discouraged. When there is that which is discouraged. No I, it's only a moment of that reality which is conditioned already. But ignorance take it for how I cannot have such. See, the I is there. all the time in the day, from this to that, from this moment to that moment all the time. That's why understanding this, there's no rush to how I at all, but to develop the understanding that actually, as long as the reality does not appear as it is, with right understanding enough to know that it cannot be taken for I, only that the idea of I will be less and less, little by little, until the moment of enlightenment, no more. It's gone completely. But
And
it has to be, yes, please, Kun John.
sorry, Ajahn. And to now, I think the useless self-talk that you mentioned is an accumulated tendency that everybody has. But it doesn't mean that there can't be wise consideration also, because there is thinking at different levels during the day. And if there is an interest in the Dhamma, in understanding about the truth of present moment realities, then there will be a condition for thinking about those things at some level from time to time, even while there is useless self-talk going on. It doesn't have to be, I must have less self-talk, useless self-talk in order to have some wise consideration. As we know, there can be moments of kusala arising in the midst of strong agusala of different kinds. And so it is with the wise consideration. If there's interest in the Dhamma, it will condition some consideration at some level. It may not be as apparent as we would like it to be, but we should not think that because there's so much obvious useless thinking that this needs to be somehow reduced in order for the wise consideration to flourish more.
Yeah. After my retirement, I do not associate with any people. So I have less dosa. And it's rare for me to have dosa in my daily life. So it's a good thing. Life is easier. But it's sort of endless self-talk.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it's the same for everyone.
Yeah.
It's just before we didn't realize how all day, like all night, there was just endless, useless chatter going on. But it's just different moments of thinking and then gone. And as Jonathan said, in between all the nonsense and the fantasy thinking, there can be moments of understanding. And it shows the very strong clinging to self that would like so much to get rid of it or reduce it or to have less kilesa. This is just strong clinging that is talking. But when there is more understanding, gradually through the wise considering that whatever arises passes instantly. So the chatter a moment ago, it's all completely gone. And now there's seeing, now there's thinking. There can be understanding anytime. And they're just passing dharmas, like watching a movie. None of them belong to anyone. They're just passing dharmas that are conditioned and cannot be any other way. So if they're conditions now to think about ships in the harbor or colors of someone's clothes or anything, it's just different kinds of conditioned thinking that has been accumulated through the marking of different visible objects of sounds, and so on, conditioning the thinking of this or that, just accumulated ignorance and attachment.
I think it's like other kinds of kusala. We may not be aware of the moments of metta, for example, that occur during the day, or generosity or consideration for others. We are perhaps more conscious of the dosa and the attachment. But that doesn't mean there's not these moments or some level of kusala arising from time to time in a day, but it's not recognized for what it is. I think it's the same with the wise consideration, that it has to be there because there is the interest in Dhamma, but it's not apparent, maybe. So we should resist the temptation to think that the problem is the useless thinking that goes on so much, because that is an accumulated tendency and it's not going to change anytime soon.
Like even now during the Dhamma discussion, moments of wise considering, moments of metta, moments of seeing, moments of hearing, and lots of moments of useless thinking in between. It has to be like that by conditions. Just different realities arising and then gone. And the minding so much about it, wishing it wasn't like that, it shows the strong clinging. And that is actually dosa too, the minding and not wishing to have it. Even we're not with other people, still there is the dosa, the minding about what is conditioned because of the clinging and ignorance.
Yeah, Sarah, I totally agree with you. But I see that these self-talks are mostly motivated by the idea of self.
Right.
Idea of
All
self.
about me and my experiences and my dosa and my nonsense and lots of clinging, lots to self, lots of wrong view about self.
And can I ask you, how can one develop metta? Because I've heard sort of answers many times, but I still cannot understand how metta should be developed. It's not easy task for me. So at this moment, how can we develop metta?
I think it begins with the understanding that it's a Dhamma, not self. Like last week, Anne asked about compassion, and Ajahn made a really interesting comment. She said the way to have compassion is to understand there's no one at all, no one that has compassion. Like now, other people who have just the same difficulties because of lots of akusala and useless thinking, and one would like to care for others or share with others, think of their needs instead of one's own, help with their difficulties instead of just being obsessed with one's own. So at the moments of showing kindness or caring for others, those are the moments of metta. And at those moments, there's no clinging, no disturbance. It's different from the usual thinking and attachment to oneself. So I think it always comes back to understanding, and understanding that it's a Dhamma and it has to be now, the people around. So thinking of others with goodwill rather than just thinking of oneself as usual.
But it does happen from time to time in a day. It's just that we don't recognize those moments of metta as being different from all the other moments. And I think if one, as Ajahn said, asking how is an indication that one still does not regard it as a conditioned Dhamma. But if we are to talk about what are the conditions for the arising of or the development of metta, it is developed when it arises, like other forms of kusala. Just like awareness and understanding accumulate, but it's more than accumulation, because moments of metta, if they are if they are seen and recognized as moments of kusala, and one recognizes the advantage of developing that particular mental factor, then that can be a condition for its development, but not by wanting to have more of it or thinking that there's a way of practice that will bring more of it.
Like the discussion, we went for an early morning walk and the people passing by, some wearing masks, some not wearing masks, some with their radios too loudly, some this, some that. But it's not a matter of trying to have metta, but naturally when one sees other people, is one smiling and thinking of their welfare, glad that they are happy and enjoying themselves? Or is one thinking of oneself, oh, the others should wear their masks, or the others shouldn't have their radio loudly, and why the joggers going past so quickly? So gradually there can be more understanding of when there is metta and how it's so different from the moments of clinging and thinking of oneself. At other times, when there's metta, there's no heaviness. The citta is light, just thinking of being glad that they're having a happy time and wishing them well, and then gone, but not trying to have metta, just understanding its nature when it arises, different from attachment, different from clinging to oneself.
Yeah,
The other person as a friend as opposed to an enemy. So it's not overt friendship as such, as we think of that term.
Just opportunities to show kindness or caring when they're there, that's all.
And obviously one doesn't have to be in the physical presence of other people to have other people as object of one's consciousness. Earlier you mentioned you don't meet anyone else in your daily life, and so there's less dosa, but there is still thinking about other people all the time, I should think. And so opportunity for kusala and akusala towards those people.
yeah. I understand what you're saying, but metta is not a quality which is easy to develop. It's sort of hard, at least hard for me.
The idea of I developing metta, it cannot condition more.
Yeah.
So that is the real problem. Like, for example, if I'm in the crowded lift coming up to our room and there's the idea, how can I have more metta? Then it's thinking of myself. It's not the kindness or well-wishing to the others in the crowded lift. And so it's only when there is metta, when there are moments of metta, that the nature of metta can be understood, leading to its development, not by trying to have metta, wishing I could have more metta.
Yeah,
Metta does not appear, it cannot be developed. But something is appearing at any moment and can be understood, can be object of awareness and understanding. So there's no need to think of the need to develop one particular form of kusala, because there can be opportunities for kusala of different kinds in a day.
yeah. There is one interesting story which I heard from Kunsushin's Tai Talk. She said that there was a foreign monk who doesn't want to accept any visitors because doing so will deprive him of the time to develop metta bhavana. And I thought that was excellent. So that talk.
Where you hear stories about people just wanting to be in a quiet room,
Yeah,
you have more metta, and then when they are disturbed or they go outside the quiet room and they're so annoyed if the telephone rings or they find there's too much traffic outside. So it has to be the understanding of metta when it arises, not trying to have metta for oneself.
yeah, not for oneself. That seems to be a key word. Thank you very much.
So now, Kun Chao, you understand wise considering, right?
Yes,
When there is the understanding what we're talking about, at that moment, there is wise considering. Otherwise, there cannot be understanding at all.
yes,
So it's not just talking about the word wise considering, but any time when there is discussion and there is understanding, it's different from there's no understanding. At moment when there's no understanding, it's not wise considering. But when you say, thank you, or I understand, at that moment, the understanding comes from wise considering about what is heard while there is discussion, right? So it's there now, daily life, but we don't know it, so we try to find out what is it. But actually, at moment of listening to the words of the Buddha from anyone, it doesn't matter at all. But at that moment, wise considering whether it's true or not, when it's true, when it's right, when it's not self, but when it is Adhamma, then that is wise considering. But at any moment when one tries to make it different way by one's own thought or one's own accumulation, not listening wisely to the truth, there cannot be understanding. But it falls away. At any moment of akusala, there is no wise considering at all. For example, you talk about the example when a monk in a quiet place and someone visited him and he got angry, disturbed. That is not metta. Why he tried so much to develop metta? Because he thought about metta in his own way. He didn't listen enough to understand what is meant by metta. But when there's more understanding, no doubt about wise considering. But when one thinks about one's own idea, not listening carefully, wisely to the words of truth, that is not wise considering. And this hinders the growth of understanding because it comes in between listening carefully, wisely, to think about one's own idea. See, that's why even listening to the Buddha's word must be wisely, considering just about that, not our own idea in between or come in. I think like this or that, how can? And that is not wise considering at all. So it's daily life right now, wise considering, or still think about one's own idea as before. That's why listen wisely, considering wisely too. About no one, enough considering wisely is so true, but it's so far to experience it. But it's the only way is to understand. At moment of understanding, there is no ignorance, no other attachment or akusala at all. Because at that moment, listening, considering wisely, and then understand the truth, that is so quite far away. Because now no understanding of sanya, which marks now everything, which is the object, and feeling about that. What about that? Indifferent or a little bit of that and this? No one at all. Until everything in daily life appear to Panya as it is little by little, unexpectedly, how much it develops in its way. No one can do anything at all. Only they are dhammas, sankhara, which are there at even this moment. Who knows what Buddha thought about what are there in this moment? Feeling all the time. Does anyone listen and know that no matter what kind of feeling is there, the understanding from the words of the Buddha can be there at that moment to understand it as just that reality. It cannot be other thing at all. Beginning to understand that no I who get such and such reality like feeling and sanya right now. This is wise considering. To understand the truth is no one. There are different realities. That's why when there is more understanding, one study more, listen more, thinking more, develop more understanding. How much understanding and how much still ignorance of what which is now appearing. No one, this is wise considering.
Yeah, this Saturday and Monday sessions are very useful opportunities to think about or to engage wise consideration. And if I do not listen to these sessions, then it's hard to have yoniso manasikara in my daily life. So I appreciate this opportunity very much. Thank you very much.
And daily life is this very moment, from moment to moment. See, the most precious moment is to have wise considering about that which is now appearing and understand more with this wise considering about the truth, not our own idea come in at all to think about this and that, but listen, that which is seen. See, we don't have to count how many times, but as long as not yet the moment of understanding it little by little, how little it is, that which is seen. Nothing in it from the word that which is seen. See? But we don't think about that. That which is seen. We think about how to have more. See? That is not right considering at all. But to not thinking in one's own way anymore, but listen carefully to each word. That which is seen. What does it mean? Wise and wise and wise considering bring about little by little to understand that which is seen. No more when it's not seen. Completely gone. So why cling to such thing which has seen? Because it's gone forever. Not to return, not to arise to be object of clinging anymore. So cling to nothing with ignorance. This is the way to let go a little bit, very little, because of wise considering about that which is seen. Because it's only seen. It's only seen. Even just very short, but it can bring about a little more understanding. That which is seen, gone completely. Less and less clinging, little by little.
Yes, I think the problem is the idea of self and idea of self who is trying to get results, always looking for results. And that is a sort of a big enemy of developing understanding.
Because we take it so very easy and simple, that which you've seen, but actually it's the absolute truth, no thing at all. It's there only when it's seen. And even at moment of sin, it's there. Who knows that that which is seen arises and falls away instantly, all the time, but by the same condition, it appears as the same object. See, this is ignorance. The magician, the citta, which arises and falls away, brings about something to think as that is still there, as permanent. But nothing is permanent, so short, very, very short. No one can expect it. It depends on panya to experience how short it is. Even this first vipassana jhana, only the characteristic of no self, because it's there as it is, that which experiences, no shape, no form. When we say that arupa is tiny, but when there's no rupa at all, see, and when it's just a little, with a tiny kalapa, and in a kalapa, 8 rupas are there. So what about just one? That is that is the base for that which is seen impinge on it. That's all. See, how can there be someone or something arising and falling away so fast? But panya develops little by little. Cannot expect that I will have this soon or next life or before the end of life and so on. That is the attachment to the I, not wise considering at all. See, so wise considering goes with understanding and brings about more understanding. For example, that which is seen. How many times in a day to think about it? Not enough conditions even to think about it, but not just thinking, but begin to understand the characteristic which can be seen, only that. No idea about how big or how large or how more and more of things around, but it's the moment of experiencing that which can be seen and gone. Wise considering, not one's own idea, to try or to do or to think more about that, just understanding that which is seen clearer and clearer. So each word should be studied carefully, wisely. Each word of the teachings of the Buddha are so true. Even wise considering, or Dhamma, or Anatta, Sunyata, and so on, all are true, but it depends on how much understanding of the words which is heard from time to time to develop. So what about what is seen? Wise enough to understand that there's nothing in it, no one, very short and then gone, not worth to cling at all, because they are not there anymore, no matter it's sound or whatever is now experienced. And this is wise considering or not, to understand even just that which is seen, that which experiences. And when it's anger, not metta, it's that which has the characteristic that no one can control, depends on conditions to arise or not arise. No one can make it arise at will, no matter what. That's right. There is less and less trying to do anything, to have anything, but understanding what is there by conditions as no one and nothing. Only ignorance, which keeps on going from day to day, from life to life, on and on, endlessly, seeing the danger of that, which is no one at all, but it's conditioned to arise. So it arises. It cannot stop to arise when there are conditions for its arising. So this is the way Dhamma is, anatta, uncontrollable, arising and falling away from nothing and then something and then nothing as nothing. So what's the use of seeing or experiencing when it's from nothing and then to nothing? But no one can stop the accumulation of akusala. It's so great that Panya develops little by little to letting go, wrong understanding, which brings about everything unwholesome in life. And this is why considering when there's understanding of what is now appearing and the way to develop the way it is, little by little. And that is why it's so subtle that it is the fourth Ariya Satya. When Panya has no doubt about each moment of understanding can lead to that moment, that it can appear as it is. Only when there is no attachment, ignorance about the characteristic of what is there now. And from understanding of no self, and there are different realities, can letting go little by little of mana and jealousy and attachment and whatever are there in life that is not known yet as no one. It's me to understand it. It's not me, it's only a reality. Seeing is a reality. Hearing is a reality. See, everything is just a moment of arising and falling away as it is. And then no more at all. In samsara, not just only in this life. Otherwise, one studied the teachings with the idea of I. I understand, I know. But actually, the I is there. Not understanding of that Buddha taught from hearing about citta and cittasika, vitaka, manasikara, chanda, and everything. But Panya can understand that which is covered up. Because when there is less attachment to a reality, the other reality can appear. That is there too. Like chanda. Of what? Kusala or akusala. Depending on conditions, chanda is not belong. It does not belong to anyone at all. What chanda do you have, Intl.Dhamma?
Not so much.
Yes, you must have different chanda, but not so much of a certain chanda.
Chanda for cooking.
Yes, see, understand now that it's not you, but it's the interest in certain objects.
Yeah.
So at the point of wanting to cook, chanda is there, begin to be object of understanding. And lobha is there too. See, when it's akusala, But when it's kusala, there is chanda, but no other unwholesome reality with it. So at moment of cooking, there is not just chanda, there is also lopa too. Different characteristics, because chanda can be interest in kusala, but when it's a kusala, chanda arises with lopa. And when it's wholesome, chanda arises with lopa, no dosa, no moha. And this is life, not anyone. This is wise considering. See, you don't have to try to find out what is wise and when it's wise considering. It is with understanding because of wise considering. And what else? For your Sanda, many things are known, right? But what appears is so dominant. Cooking. But there must be chanda even at moment of reaching out to the hand to pick up something with lopa. So even lopa, can it be known? And what the other reality with it, can they be known? Depending on conditions, unexpectedly, all the time, anatta. But the anatta-ness is not seen as anatta when there's no understanding. But when there's understanding, reality appears little by little as a reality, no one. That's why it can understand the reality in life naturally. What are there? More and more and more in a day, from not at all, and then something only, and then more, a little more, by conditions, wise considering. That's right. All dhammas are not in the book. They are now, and any moment in life.
Yes, it's important to see anatta, but each speech, each behavior, and each thinking is wrapped with the idea of self. Self is always associated with what we do, think, and speak. And probably the root cause of having self must be ignorance. And ignorance is always there.
By conditions,
Yes, but
right.
conditions.
The conditions for wholesome, for panya, can lead to more and more interest, chanda, of kusala and panya. No question about whatever is there by conditions. No one.
And Tadao, you keep mentioning idea of self, and no doubt there is a fair amount of idea of self for all of us. But I wonder whether you are assuming that every thinking about oneself is the same as an idea of self, because I think the wrong view of self has its own characteristic, and even the person who has no more wrong view still thinks about themselves. They have to, because when they get up in the morning and go through the same routine as you and I do, thoughts are all about oneself, not so much about other people. So the wrong view of self is, as I understand it, a view of the reality of the way realities are, how things are in reality. So I just want to mention that everyone thinks about themselves, but that thinking is not going to be wholesome, of course. It could be with attachment or conceit or wrong view. And the term for this used by the Buddha in the suttas was manyati, thinking with tanha, mana, or ditthi. But we don't have to assume that every thought of oneself is the same as wrong view of self.
Yeah, I think you are right. I do understand that point. But somehow, always self, just beside or inside of me.
Always lurking, ready to arise. The tendency is there, conditioning the taking of anything for something or for oneself so commonly. I give you a little story just because we have time, like you mentioned about the monk and trying to have metta and then being disturbed. Well, Ajahn won't mind me mentioning it, I'm sure. When we were coming back, I think we were coming back from Vietnam one time, and we were on a shuttle bus at the airport, and we were just sitting quietly chatting, and sitting opposite us, I don't know if Ajahn will remember, there was a mother and a daughter, and the shuttle bus started, and the child was about 7 or 8, started vomiting very strongly. She was sick everywhere, and everyone immediately was trying to move out of the way. But Ajahn just sat quietly and immediately got out her tissues to pass to the child and started smiling and talking to the child like it was just a normal occurrence, trying to help the child feel better. So it's not a matter of trying to have metta, but when anytime one's with others or thinking of others, there are opportunities to be kind and be considerate and be helpful, as opposed to, as usual, just thinking of oneself, not wanting to get dirty or wanting to move away from the nasty smell, or thinking of one's own convenience. So this is the nature of metta. Whenever one's with people, there are opportunities for kindness, like in this occasion, compassion too. And that's how it develops, by understanding its nature when it arises naturally, not my metta or not even Ajahns, just characteristic of metta and kindness that can be understood when it arises. And that's how it develops. It's the complete opposite of, like in your story, sitting quietly, trying to have more kindness or more kusala. So we don't know what unexpected thing may happen, like in one of the discussions recently when someone who was uninvited came in and was causing trouble. So at that moment, unexpectedly, this happens, but it's also opportunity for metta and understanding anytime. Someone suddenly gets angry or interrupts, but what about the metta then? I think it's the complete opposite of trying to have metta or trying to be a kind person.
Yeah, I think it's important to associate with people who understand the value of kusala and the value of metta. Because in our busy social lives, we do not have many opportunities to appreciate these good qualities. And for instance, in Japan, our mass media writes or broadcast lots of stuff, but most of them are not associated with kusala or metta. So better to hear a lot of stories about these qualities.
The Tao, I was thinking earlier when you brought up this question about how to, about the situation, say, if you haven't heard the Dhamma and you appreciate all forms of kusala, including metta, and so you would be thinking about how you can have more metta, you can have more other forms of kusala. But what's the difference between someone who has not heard the Dhamma and someone who's heard the Dhamma? It's not like they want to have more kusala, but it's seeing the importance of understanding what appears right now. So at any time, the most important is just understanding. It's not any form of kusala. So I think usually when we think about how we can have more metta and all that, we forget about the danger of ignorance and the importance of understanding what appears now.
My point is that environment is also very important. Accumulation, one's accumulation, and also one's environments. These are important factors for developing kusala.
But more important than thinking about what's important, isn't it to understand what's arising now?
Yeah.
And isn't it an excuse when one thinks about in the environment and the problem of the media and the people around who don't understand and so on? Because it's always back to this moment, no matter one's watching television or in the supermarket, or, I mean, understanding can arise anytime. Metta can be there anytime when one thinks about the others. So the test is always at the present moment, no matter where and when and how. Otherwise, it's like an excuse. So, well, those people are all getting annoyed, so I'm getting annoyed too, or something like that.
Yeah, you are right.
I think we always make excuses for not having understanding right now. But there is an opportunity any moment, any time. Even in the middle of the night when one wakes up with thinking about nonsense, even that is the time for understanding, anytime.
Shall we come back to the question whether at moment of asking about this or that, whether there is the idea of self or not? Can anyone know? No thought about anything as Dhamma at all in a day, when there's no hearing about the teachings at all. But after hearing the teaching, there is always what has been accumulated to come and hinder to study and find out the word of the Buddha, the truth of it. For example, at this moment of talking, no matter about kusala or akusala or this or that, is there any idea of self? But we don't have to think by one's own, because Buddha taught about the asava, 3 moments after experiencing an object through eye, ear, and so on. It's there already. Ditthi does not arise with the seeing, hearing, so on, with sampatichana, santirana, and votapana. But only 3 moments gone, it's there. So how can there be the understanding of that if Buddha didn't teach about this, that it's there? That's why there is the idea, no matter we don't talk it, I see, but it's there as I see, I hear, after seeing and hearing. See, that's why no matter we are talking about what, but when there is seeing after 3 moments, the Didasava is there. We don't have to think by one's own, try so hard to find out, because it's not as strong as when it's like Nivarana and Kilesa, but it's there already by conditions, because it has been accumulated quite so long. And when it's time to arise, it is there already by conditions, even right now. That's why we know that when there is understanding, we don't try to stop it. We don't try to understand it, because it does not appear. Even that which appears, it appears to ignorance or to satipatthana or to what level of understanding, depending on conditions. But from learning about it, how subtle it is, each moment, that's why we learn the teaching and to consider what he taught. And it applies to our situation. Even right now we are talking, they're seeing. So Didasava, Avijjasva, are there already? As I see, no matter we are talking about what, but at moment of seeing, it's I see, unknowingly all the time. We don't have to speak out, but it's there. That's why we just learn to understand the different level of panya and the great wisdom of the Buddha, who enlightened everything as it is, no matter yesterday, today, tomorrow, past, present, future. There is the absolute truth. That's why just learn about the teaching, each word, that is wise considering. And it applies no matter you looking, watching, laughing, or anytime, asava is there. That's why when panya is there, eradicated anusaya and asava too. And after becoming a sotapanna, can there be the Didasava and Avijjasava at moment of laughing, seeing, walking, cooking, anytime? See? But not try to understand it, because Buddha said after 3 moments, so it's there already. No need to try to eradicate it. Panya works its way. Understanding.
Ajahn, just a minute ago, you mentioned something about after someone becomes a sotapanna, the asawa, asawa, the other asavas are still there, but at that point, asawa would have been eradicated, wouldn't it?
That's why she asked, is there? So there
Oh,
is.
I see. Okay.
There is Avijjasava, but not Didasava. So
thank you, Sarah. Thank you. Excuse me,
yes.
Ajahn.
No, it did sound a bit like that, but it was just question. Yes, just to consider. So no Didasavas, you say, yes.
Thank you.
That's right. Learning to understand the truth, not just the word.
Yeah. Ajahn, I have another question. And I may have misheard because it's because I'd always understood differently. The rupa itself, say visual object, smell comes to mind on this one, itself is neither pleasant nor unpleasant. Is that correct?
Not correct.
Okay.
What about the vipaka, kusala vipaka, and akusala vipaka? What for?
As results of kusala or akusala kamma.
To
And why
experience the
it is-
pleasant or unpleasant object.
I'm sorry, Sarah, I didn't hear that.
It has to be the desirable, undesirable object that's experienced. So what's the point of kusala karma
Yes.
or kusala karma? The result of the kusala karma experience is the object that is pleasant or desirable, the desirable rupa, and the akusala vipaka. The
Right,
result of akusala karma experience is the undesirable object.
right. That's what I'd previously understood, but I perhaps misheard something a week or so ago. But
I know what you are hearing. So the smell itself is pleasant or unpleasant, or the visible
Right.
object now is pleasant or unpleasant, but usually not known. If there's a lot of experience of an unpleasant smell, then we can say generally it's the unpleasant smell.
yes,
But the real test or determinant is whether at a moment of akusala vipaka it experiences unpleasant smell. So we can say now the smell or the visible object is pleasant or unpleasant, but it's just speculating about it. It's actually not
okay,
known at this
okay.
moment.
That makes sense.
I think that's what
Because-
we were discussing.
Yeah, because we can't know, but one can
One can
by
speculate.
accumulation, one can be, there can be lopa or dosa
Afterwards.
following
Yes.
afterwards. Okay.
Like now, who knows whether the visible object is a pleasant or unpleasant one, but immediately, like now, for me, there's clinging to what is seen because I was thinking about the boats on the harbour and so on. But it's just thinking with loba, not the moment that the visible object is seen, and it's not known whether it's pleasant or unpleasant. So one just speculates about the object. But
Okay, well
actually,
that's
at the moment of experiencing, at the moment of seeing or the moment of smelling, it is either pleasant or unpleasant object.
okay. And often not known.
Not known. No.
But the reaction to it is known.
Yes, well, conventionally, there is objects that are wished for and objects that
Yes.
are not wished for. And the wished for ones we take to be pleasant because there is a pleasant reaction to that. And the unwished for ones take to be unpleasant because there may be a dosa reaction. But that is not the same as, of course, as the inherent quality of the visual object or audible object.
I thought I misunderstood or misheard something recently, but yes, that's what I thought, because the result would be correspond. Vipaka would correspond in terms of pleasant or unpleasant with kusala or akusala, but we can't know. But our reaction to it could be seeing. I mean, one could really dislike what one thinks is seen, and yet it's
As an object.
it could, as an object, yeah.
Or like
But
the
not in terms of
smelling of the durian.
yeah.
It may be unpleasant smell, but for many people it's the object of
Yes.
attachment instantly.
Yes.
and for others, the object of aversion, instantly
Yeah.
depending on accumulated tendencies.
Right.
But the smell experienced is still just the smell, the unpleasant smell, perhaps.
Well,
But
we don't know, do we?
we don't know.
The unpleasant
just-
experiences.
it's like if there's like when the child vomited and for everyone it seems unpleasant smell, we can say, okay, it's unpleasant smell, and we can assume that it is an unpleasant smell at those moments of
Mhm.
but it depends on the tendencies, whether it's the condition for attachment or aversion or metta
Yes,
immediately afterwards.
right, right. Okay, thank you. That clears that up.
We're so used to thinking of the visible objects and the sounds that one likes and looking for them and clinging, and actually it's not even known now whether it's the pleasant sound or unpleasant sound.
Right. And
there's
we
no
always
point.
assume that we always assume that it was, well, we don't always, I guess, we could assume that it was a result of kusala Dhamma, but we really don't know.
No.
And if it's a
Like-
situation or something, then we don't know it at all.
Like when one's surrounded by different fruits like durian and pineapple, and one assumes the result of kusala vipaka to have these experiences. So just a long story about
Yeah,
karma and a long assumption, so many
Yes.
assumptions about what are good results and bad results.
right.
But actually that moment of vipaka is so brief and then gone, completely unknown what the
Right.
object, whether the object's pleasant or unpleasant.
Thank you. And excuse me for the background noise there.
We've got some background noise too, so
Kanachanka, in the past I've heard you say to be like the dust rag. And when I first heard that, I went, oh, you have to defend yourself when something's not going right. Can you speak a little bit more about being like a dust rag?
Okay. When someone talk about you, what do you feel? A dust rag?
Well, when they speak about me unkindly, I feel defensive.
See, not a dust rag. Because the dust rag can be, when whoever step on it, it doesn't mind at all. See, because no I, no self, at that moment it's only hearing, thinking, that's all gone completely. No one. Why take it as so serious, wasting the time thinking about that instead of understanding it as no more at all, no I at all. So all kusala, all kinds of akusala can be reduced when there is more understanding of no self. When you ask someone, say, and people or one or two talk about you, different manners, what do you feel? It doesn't matter at all as long as it's gone. No one, see. Better than it's me. Why do they think of me like that? See? No use to waste time thinking about that. It's gone, all gone. And akusala is there. Asava is there. Pavasava, kamasava, or tidasava, or avijjasava, depend on conditions. And the teachings of the Buddha can be considered wisely at any time, at any level, depending on understanding. Is there me? No, not at all. I talk to we call it Vityakorn, when there is the discussion at the foundation. Actually, no one is Vidyakon. One can study and understand the teachings and share at moment of sharing to the other on some subjects. It is Vidyakon because he understands that enough to share. But at home, no Vidyakon, not trying to think that I'm Vidyakon all day from then on. See, so no one at all. It's only the moment of doing something as function or this responsibility, like sharing the other. And someone may call you Ajahn and so on. But actually, no one at all. Not at all. Otherwise, the idea of self, cling to the idea of self. And when the teachings talk about no self, and there's the idea of self, it should be the understanding of that moment as not me, even it is conceit or ego or whatever it is. That's why even Sariputta, he himself, no kilesa, said that he's like that dust rag, ready to be dust rag at any time, because it's not your problem, it's the other's problem who think about you in that way. See, but for you, it doesn't mean anything at all. Just gone. Why keep it? What's the use of keeping it? The words which is heard, and think a lot about it. Just your own thinking with akusala, clinging to the self, attanutiti, so much. No understanding. So when we talk about no understanding, it seems like it hurts the listener, but actually it's the reminder. See, no one there at all. How important, it's gone. What is taken for very important, gone. Immediately, instantly, no more at all. And what is the better than just try to keep on to be yourself, trying to explain to that person you are not such and so on, wasting time, because the precious moment is to understand the truth little by little by conditions. If anger arises, it should be the object of understanding instead of trying not to have it at all. This is wise considering. See, it has to go on and on and on to be more conditions for understanding and letting go. So each word of the Buddha, just one by one, will lead to the enlightenment, the path to directly experience the truth, the Four Noble Truths. If there's no understanding right now, what about the next moment? No understanding and no understanding. And expect to have it. But what about this moment? If it's not there this moment, how can there be at the moment? And this is the way Dhamma develops. From listening, wise considering, to be conditioned for direct understanding at moment of hearing such word or such situation, any situation. With the understanding of no one, it does not disturb at all. It brings about more understanding of letting go, the idea of self. No wrong speech, back, or whatever. No payapata, no understanding, because at that moment, the development of understanding can condition moment of understanding that moment as not self. And this is the development from understanding, from hearing the teachings, the intellectual understanding, to the moment when it's there with understanding, right then. It can be wise thinking, only thinking, but it leads to more direct understanding, because No need to think. It's there, understood, can be understood. Hardness, softness, sound, hearing, anything. Would you like to be? That's great. Or see the value of it. At that moment, no akusala, no unpleasant feeling. No words to return. Just have metta, see?
That's important, not to shoot back at somebody, because then it becomes very uncomfortable. But I really like the way you explained that, Ajahn. Very, very good. Thank you.
Because usually one minds the others are kusala. But what about that very moment which we take for our own? And that can be eradicated. It can be developed. The understanding of just a moment gone. Otherwise, how can there be a moment of directly experience the arising and falling away of that very moment, when there's no idea or understanding at all about that very moment that is so brief or so short? It develops in its own way, little by little. And panya make difference little by little, from being angry so much into understanding and have metta instead.
Yes, and I think when we do react in a defensive way, it is there's so much mana involved, flying the banner, why did they say it to me, and so on. And that's the opposite of metta. Finding oneself important, the opposite of being like a dust rag with metta.
Yes, yes, indeed, Sarah, mana. And I sometimes go over those conversations afterwards, and it's like, why didn't I say this? Why didn't I do that? So again, mana. I think I'll get that tattooed across my forehead, mana.
As soon as there's reacting up, it's like the banner flying, yes. The important me, the opposite of the dust rag. And as Jonathan said, it's all gone anyway. It's always back to now, not my mana, but so common.
Very good.
So we do cling on to those moments, though, don't we? Any of the moments, and I guess it's different for everyone, because everyone's got different accumulations. But you know, the defensiveness is quite strong, and I guess it's because of mana. Yeah, defending myself,
and then clinging to the story of why did I or how did I, and but it's all gone. It's always back to now.
And at that moment, it's worth considering. See? No need to call it, but it's there. A moment of getting angry, not wise considering at all. See? Understanding can understand little by little until it's strong enough to understand even moment of anger. Panya can understand it on different level of panya. That's why instead of thinking about the other's fault or the other's akusala, what about the moment hearing that? Is it Panya after hearing or a kusala after hearing. It has to be one's own. That's the meaning of living alone. Hearing and then thinking alone about such and such. No more any being, even that we take for that person or I who hears the word or who think about that. This can be when there are right conditions enough for such and such level of understanding.
Those moments of wise considering seem to be very few, very far between wise considering. Mostly it's agusala accumulations for me.
Depending on conditions, see, the more hearing and considering, the more understanding, the more kusala of letting go and understanding actually no one living alone, and even alone, they are all dhammas, no one. The inside thinking about outside, but actually only the inside is there. And no matter what we are thinking about, it's only just concept, taking it for real, but actually no more, gone. Everything's gone. Even thinking at that very moment is not permanent.
Thank you, Ajahn. Most helpful.
Yes, thank you very much, Ajahn.
ค่ะ สวัสดีค่ะทุกคนค่ะ
Thank you very much.
Thank you.